With Donald Trump back in the White House, the mood in Europe is grim. The Trump bill they were dreading and also preparing for has been forced down their throats finally. Europe needs to put its act together and reinvent its strengths. Gone are the ifs and buts. The time is now. But the perennial question still remains: how? So, has Europe lost America? European leaders met in Budapest the day after the US presidential elections results were announced. Now, at that meeting, President of the European Council, Charles Michel, emphasized once again that while the US remains an essential ally, Europe must build its own strength and sovereignty. Now, since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, numerous discussions have taken place around creating a stable European order. The EU, which is a complex blend of federation and confederation across 27 member states with diverse foreign policies and responses to Russia's grinding war in the East, faces a future that has to be shaped by Europe itself. It cannot be reliant on either the US or Russia or China. With Donald Trump pushing Europe towards self reliance, Poland's Donald Tusk highlighted the opportunity in this challenge. He reiterated that the Trump bill will serve as a needed wake up call for Europe to make painful but necessary structural changes. However, this does not mean that Europe has actually lost American support. Global dynamics of the CRINC, the China, Russia, Iran, North Korea axis, limit drastic shifts in US foreign policy, and Trump may seek ways to balance the Ukraine conflict and steer it towards negotiation. However, this does not mean that Europe has lost American support. Global dynamics of the CRINC axis, the China, Russia, Iran, North Korea axis, limits drastic shifts in US foreign policy, and Trump may seek ways to balance the Ukraine conflict and steer it towards negotiation. In my previous column, I've discussed the CRINC axis at length. So, to secure US backing for Ukraine, Europe must show commitment to NATO by meeting its 2% GDP target, as many of the largest economies, especially Germany, have been slow to bolster their security investments. So, they've been reluctant to actually, provide their commitment to NATO. Now, let's review the Trump proofing efforts and distinguish between their rhetoric from reality, or what I also call their performative function. Now, in the past 3 years, Europe has undergone changes it neither anticipated nor wanted. It has successfully diversified away from its reliance on Russian energy, significantly reducing Russia's energy revenues, and this itself is a major feat. However, this shift is just the beginning of what is required for true transformation. To achieve real change, Europe must develop the political will to leverage its economic power for strategic influence. The EU is a 20 trillion economic bloc, but it does not have sovereign defense capabilities. The journey to becoming a geostrategic force will be challenging, and it must move beyond the former comfort of a peace dividend, because there is no longer peace in the continent nor a dividend to gain from it anymore. One thing is rather clear, that supporting Ukraine and reinforcing European security was always going to fall on Europe, regardless of who's in the White House. Now, even if a Democrats' administration had come to power, there would still be a push to Europe for military burden sharing. Trump's coming to power will accelerate it. The current conventional war has shaken the core of the European project, and I'm referring to the Russia-Ukraine war, leaving many to wonder why Europe remains hesitant to adapt. Although a full-scale war was previously considered the worst-case scenario, Europe's response, however, suggests that even the present reality has not been enough to catalyze fundamental change. But it doesn't mean that Europe has not done anything. Over the past year, the EU's initiatives to address the security crisis have been termed Trump-proofing, aiming to protect the bloc's security interests independent of US politics. Now, this process has two primary components: strengthening European defense capabilities, which is the first one, and second, providing military support to Ukraine. Now, the latter includes plans to enhance NATO's role by creating a €100 billion military fund for Ukraine and coordinating aid to complement the efforts of the Ramstein Group. Now, while innovative, these initiatives remain unfulfilled or partially fulfilled. Additionally, the EU's pledge to produce 1 million 155 mm artillery shells for Ukraine has only managed to meet half of that goal. But its capacity has been growing, and perhaps by 2025, it could be producing more shells with lesser effort. However, that remains to be seen because we're speaking about the next year. So far, Europe's defense industry, although state of the art, has struggled to respond to Ukraine's pressing need for artillery in a coordinated manner due to its traditional focus on serving specific customer needs rather than mass ammunition supply. Similarly, Czech President Peter Pavel's initiative to supply close to 1 million shells has also fallen short. Now, there have also been efforts to bypass the EU treaty restrictions, such as the Article 41.2, to purchase military equipment for Ukraine, and this will take time to yield results. The European Peace Facility, the EPF, an off budget mechanism, has provided some support, though not decisively. Additionally, the European Commission's commitment of a $50 billion fund, which is called a Ukraine facility, for aid reconstruction is helpful but does not contribute to immediate military needs. Now, a more concrete example of Trump-proofing is seen in long-term security agreements that NATO members have individually signed with Ukraine. Now, these agreements, which offer ongoing financial support, military aid, and defense industry cooperation, serve as a patchwork solution to Ukraine's unfulfilled NATO membership aspirations. The security guarantees that Kyiv desires, which is NATO's Article 5 protection, remains elusive. While many in Europe recognize that only NATO membership or nuclear weapons could secure Ukraine's territorial integrity, member states are divided due to fears of escalation. But it's an unconvincing fear because given the current level of devastation and meat grinding wars, Europe already faces existential risks and, in my opinion, is already living in an era of escalation. Now, coming to the bloc itself, because the EU is also putting together long-term Trump-proofing measures for the EU itself, are also underway with goals set for 2030. Now, although these initiatives are unlikely to aid Ukraine in the immediate future, they are vital for transforming Europe's security landscape over time. Now, in March 2024, the EU launched a new defense industrial strategy to coordinate defense procurement and revitalize its defense technology sector, and this has opened the door for global partnerships. Now, this shift creates potential opportunities for countries like India. And by the way, India is already sending over 50% of its defense exports to the US and has growing defense ties with European nations. Now, South Korea has become a key defense supplier to the EU, while India has also, I would say, quite thriving defense collaborations with several European states such as France, Germany, Spain, Sweden, Poland, and the Czech Republic. Although most of Europe's military modernization has come from the US firms and European firms, the demand to support Ukraine has strained production lines, underscoring the need for additional partnerships to meet the 2030 targets. Now, like I said, South Korea has been quick to capitalize on the ongoing process. Now, if proper coordination mechanisms are set with New Delhi, this cooperation could actually become mutually beneficial as the EU incentivizes joint equipment purchases. Now, India must look into this window of opportunity. Another critical area of Europe's security transformation involves boosting its maritime power projection. India is already a strategic partner in Europe's efforts to substantiate maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region. This aspect of the EU strategy aligns with a broader geopolitical outlook, positioning Europe as an active player in securing global trade routes and countering potential threats in the region. And here, I mean especially the hybrid threats. On the economic front, achieving Europe's competitiveness is a far more challenging task, as it requires deep structural changes. The 2024 Draghi report, and I've done a column on that as well, has emphasized that the EU must overcome regulatory barriers and adopt more flexible policies to maintain economic competitiveness. The economic decline of major European economies, particularly Germany, it demonstrates the consequences of failing to invest in innovation. Now, recently, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's government outlined a strategy focused on enhancing relations with India, and this highlighted the importance of partnerships in addressing economic stagnation. I mean, Germany's economic stagnation. However, Scholz's recent dismissal of his finance minister suggests that Germany's economic challenges are quite deep rooted. Author Wolfgang Manchau, in his book Kaput, argues that Germany's economic challenges stem from a systemic dysfunction in its economy and political culture, and this necessitates a fundamental shift in its economic Weltanschauung, or what we can call in English as economic worldview. So, all this while the picture looks rather grim. But are there also any silver linings? There are a few. Not all European countries face the same issues. Some, especially in Eastern Europe, have shown resilience and leadership. Poland, for instance, has made significant strides in military modernization. Now, despite facing its economic challenges, France as well has taken a more pragmatic approach to nuclear energy. President Emmanuel Macron has repeatedly called for a more strategically autonomous Europe. And actually, even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, he was the one who continuously advocated for the EU's strategic compass to guide its defense and security agenda. However, without broader EU cohesion, these aspirations risk remaining symbolic. The EU's aspirations for economic security often don't align with its actual practices. Building true competitiveness is a significant challenge that requires more than lofty speeches from EU Parliament stages. Basically, it demands timely and concrete action. Trump's return to White House could entail a collective decline for the West unless the widely acknowledged course corrections within the EU are put into place. Now, if these challenges succeed, future Europeans will look back with gratitude on these transformative shifts. If not, Europe may face decades of dysfunction. In my opinion, the first 100 days of Trump will be consequential in ascertaining the direction of Europe's future. How bright or bleak it looks will depend on the collective will of the world's most successful geoeconomic bloc. The link to my article is provided in the description box. Do read for more references and tell me what you think about the video. I will be back to discuss that and more. Stay tuned.